I came home early from my girls' trip to surprise my husband and overheard him on the phone. Marriage is a complete nightmare, bro. I wake up every day regretting my decision. If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already. We had just celebrated our 3-year anniversary. I quietly left and returned at my normal time, greeting him with a kiss. 5 days later, he called me 27 times in 1 hour because he understood what I did. So, I don't even know where to begin with this. My hands are literally shaking as I type this out on my phone. I've deleted and rewritten this post like 7 times already. Everyone's asleep in the house and I'm just sitting here in the bathroom with the shower running so Connor doesn't hear me crying. Connor and I have been married for 3 years. He always seemed so genuine compared to the guys I usually met through my family's social circles. My family has money. Not like crazy rich, but comfortable enough that I've never worried about bills. Connor comes from a middle-class background. We renewed our vows last weekend at this small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. He literally cried reading his vows to me, y'all. Cried. Said I was the best thing that ever happened to him. Anyway, I was on a girls' trip to Nashville with my 3 besties from college. We've been planning it for months. We had all these plans. Spa days, wine tours, checking out that new rooftop bar everyone's been posting about on TikTok. But on the second day, Scarlett got food poisoning from this sketchy hot chicken place, and Tina had some emergency she had to handle remotely. The trip was falling apart, so we decided to cut it short. I thought, hey, perfect opportunity to surprise Connor. He's always saying how much he misses me when I'm gone, always texting me those wish you were here selfies from our couch with his sad puppy eyes. So I took an early flight back, stopped to pick up his favorite nachos from this hole-in-the-wall place near our house, and some craft beer he's been obsessed with lately. I was so excited to surprise him. I had this whole image in my head of his face lighting up when he saw me. I came in through the garage using my code so I could really surprise him. Our house has this weird layout where you can't see into the living room from the entryway. I could hear him talking upstairs in his gaming room, obviously on the phone since I didn't hear anyone else. So I set the food down in the kitchen and quietly headed up the stairs thinking I'd surprise him mid-call. And then I heard it. Marriage is a complete nightmare, bro. I wake up every day regretting my decision. I froze on the stairs. My heart literally stopped. I thought maybe he was joking around with one of his friends, so I waited for the laugh. But there was no laugh. If it wasn't for her family's money, I'd be gone already. The only good thing about this whole situation is that I don't have to worry about rent or bills anymore. I could literally feel my heart cracking in half as I stood there. The vow renewal thing last weekend? Pure torture, man. Had to stand there making up all this romantic bullshit while her family looked on all misty-eyed. I've gotten good at the performance, though. Oscar-worthy. He laughed then. Actually, laughed. But hey, small price to pay for the lifestyle, right? Her dad's talking about bringing me into the family business next year. Once I'm established there, I'll have options. More options than just being the money wife's husband. The money wife. That's what he calls me behind my back. 3 years of marriage, and I'm just the money wife to him. I don't know how I managed it, but I silently went back downstairs, grabbed the food and beer, and slipped out. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost 2 hours just sobbing. My mascara was everywhere, and this old lady actually knocked on my window to ask if I needed help. I told her my dog died, the first lie of many I'd tell that day. I returned the food, told them my husband wasn't feeling well, and texted the girls that I decided to go to a hotel near the airport so I could catch up on some emails before heading back to Nashville the next day. I drove around for hours trying to figure out what to do. Every memory of our relationship was replaying in my head with this new horrible filter. All those times he insisted on paying for dinner, but only when it was somewhere cheap. How he was so reluctant to let me help with his student loans until I practically forced him. How he always seemed to have these big dreams, but never quite enough motivation to pursue them until my dad offered connections. Our anniversary gift from his parents was this engraved wooden sign for our entryway that says, "Where your story begins." I literally stared at it this morning while drinking coffee and thinking our story was just beginning its next chapter. But it turns out our story was actually just a financial transaction for Connor. I decided to go back to Nashville. I spent the next 3 days pretending everything was fine with my girlfriends, even though I was dying inside and probably drank way too much wine every night, then came home at my originally scheduled time, and I greeted him with a kiss. I looked into the eyes of the man who called our marriage a nightmare and kissed him hello like nothing was wrong. I've been living this lie for 5 days now. 5 days of sleeping next to someone who apparently regrets waking up next to me every morning. 5 days of analyzing every interaction we've ever had, wondering what was real and what was part of his Oscar-worthy performance. I've been checking our accounts. Turns out Connor has been making these weird withdrawals. Nothing huge, but like $200 here, $300 there. Always just under the amount we agreed would need a conversation. Where is that money going? Has he been saving up for his eventual escape? Does he have someone else? Oh God, does he have someone else? Is there another woman who knows I'm just the money wife to him? Do they laugh about me together? I haven't told anyone yet. Not my friends, not my family, especially not my family. My dad adores Connor, is always talking about how he's like the son he never had. It would break his heart to know Connor only sees him as a meal ticket. I've been making subtle changes though. Yesterday, I accidentally left open a browser tab with my separate bank account information, the one he doesn't have access to. This morning, I mentioned that my dad is actually reconsidering some of his business ventures due to economy concerns. I've been working late, being just a little less affectionate, taking more calls in private. The bathroom sink has been leaking for weeks, and Connor kept saying he'd fix it this weekend. Last night, I just called a plumber without telling him. When the guy showed up, Connor looked so confused. I just shrugged and said, You seemed busy with other things. The plumber charged us $85 for a 10-minute fix, and I could see Connor mentally calculating that money being wasted. And my plan is working. Connor's getting nervous. This afternoon, while I was out running errands, he called me 27 times in 1 hour. 27 times. When I finally called back, he was practically frantic, asking if everything was okay, if I was mad at him, if something happened with my family. I played it cool. Said my phone was in my purse while I was at Target. Said everything was fine. Asked why he would think otherwise. The silence on his end was deafening. So now I'm here, typing this out while locked in the bathroom with the shower running, trying to figure out what to do next. I know I need to confront him, but I also need to be smart about this. We have joint accounts, my mistake. My name is on the mortgage, but he's on the deed. Everything is tangled up. I'm trying to come up with a plan. Part of me wants to just scream in his face about what I heard, but another part wants to be more strategic. What if I slowly withdraw emotionally while getting my financial affairs in order? What if I document everything? What if I let him think everything is okay until it's decidedly not okay for him? I think that's what I'm going to do. He spent 3 years lying to my face. Maybe I can manage a few weeks of the same. I have to go. The hot water is probably running out and Connor will wonder why I've been in the shower for 45 minutes. I'm going to go out there, kiss my husband goodnight, and lie beside him while planning my exit. Edit. Connor just texted asking if I want to go away for the weekend to reconnect. The audacity of this man. Will update when I can. First update. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my last post. I read every single comment, and y'all gave me the strength to get through these past 2 weeks without completely falling apart. Sorry for the delay in updating. I've been careful about my online activity since Connor has suddenly developed this weird habit of casually glancing at my phone whenever it's nearby. So, it's been 14 days since I overheard my husband of 3 years telling his friend that our marriage is a nightmare and I'm just his meal ticket to financial comfort. 14 days of sleeping next to someone who apparently regrets waking up beside me every morning. 14 days of the most exhausting performance of my life. The day after my last post, I decided I needed to be methodical about this. No emotional reactions, no confrontations, until I had everything lined up perfectly. I made a list, I'm a chronic list maker when stressed, of everything I needed to do. Secure my financial situation, gather evidence of his true character, not for legal reasons, but for when family inevitably asks questions. Find out exactly how deep his deception goes. Prepare an exit strategy. Build a support network, without revealing everything just yet. The first thing I did was call my personal bank, the account he doesn't have access to, and increase my security measures. Changed all passwords, added verbal security questions, and made sure they knew not to discuss my account with anyone but me. Then I started slowly moving money from our joint accounts into my personal one. Nothing drastic, just enough each day that it wouldn't immediately raise flags. Is that wrong? Maybe. But finding out your husband is a gold-digging liar kind of changes your perspective on fairness. The weekend reconnection trip, Connor suggested. I agreed to it, but suggested we go to this rustic cabin my family owns by the lake instead of the luxury resort he had in mind. The look on his face, y'all. He recovered quickly with a whatever makes you happy, babe, but I saw that flash of disappointment. Everything is suddenly making sense. How he always pushes for the expensive options when he knows my family might cover it, but becomes budget conscious when it's coming from our accounts. The cabin trip was actually revealing in ways I hadn't expected. Our Wi-Fi barely works out there, and Connor spent almost the entire weekend checking his phone and complaining about the spotty signal. He kept wandering down to the end of the dock where sometimes you can get 1 bar. At one point, I followed him, quietly, and overheard him telling someone he was going crazy, being trapped in the middle of nowhere, and would make it up to them when he got back. Who was he talking to? And what exactly was he planning to make up to them? When we got home Sunday night, he immediately said he needed to run to Walmart for some stuff for work tomorrow. He was gone for over 2 hours. For Walmart, which is 12 minutes from our house. When I checked our joint credit card app later, there was no charge from Walmart, but there was a $60 charge from a bar across town. During the trip, I had accidentally mentioned that my dad was considering early retirement due to some health concerns, completely made up, and might be scaling back some business operations. Connor spent the next hour asking increasingly detailed questions about Dad's plans, the family trusts, and our future security. Barely a word about Dad's fictional health issues. It was like watching someone rip off their mask without realizing they were doing it. I've also been digging through our financial history, and what I found made me physically sick. Over the past 3 years, Connor has borrowed nearly $17,000 from our joint accounts for what he called business expenses and investments, money that never returned and he can't properly account for. There's a pattern of large withdrawals right before he visits his hometown, suggesting he's been supporting someone or something there that I don't know about. Last week, I went through his nightstand while he was at the gym, something I never thought I'd do, but desperate times. Inside, I found a second phone, one of those cheap prepaid ones from Target. It was password protected, but he'd scribbled the code on a sticky note stuck to the back. Classic Connor, always forgetting his passwords. The phone had only one contact saved, D, with dozens of texts arranging meetups and discussions about money. Some referenced the long-term plan and staying the course. One from 3 months ago literally said, just 2 more years and we're set. 2 more years until what? I took pictures of everything with my phone before carefully replacing his exactly as I found it. The psychological warfare is the strangest part of all this. I've been slightly altering my behavior, being just a little less affectionate, taking more private calls, mentioning casual conversations with our family lawyer. Nothing confrontational, just different, and Connor is losing it. 2 nights ago, he actually went through my closet while I was in the shower. I only know because he left my boots in a different order than I keep them. Yes, I'm that person who arranges her shoes precisely. When I came out and noticed, I didn't say anything, just rearranged them while he watched from the bed, pretending to be on his phone. Yesterday, I found him scrolling through my iPad search history while I was making dinner. I'd intentionally left searches for signs your husband is cheating and separate bank accounts in marriage for him to find. When I walked in, he practically threw the iPad onto the couch and started rambling about how much he loved the lasagna I was making, even though I was clearly making stir-fry. Our fridge has been making this weird clicking sound for months, and Connor always said he'd fix it. Yesterday, I casually mentioned maybe we should just buy a new one, and he immediately went into fix-it mode, spending 2 hours tinkering with it. Suddenly, all those household tasks he's been putting off for months are getting done. The bathroom door that's been squeaking since last Christmas, fixed. The broken porch light, replaced. The wobbly kitchen table, stabilized. It's like watching someone frantically trying to prove their value. I've started having lunch with Loretta once a week. She's my best friend since college and the only person I've told about what's happening. She was initially shocked, then furious on my behalf, and has now become my co-conspirator and sounding board. She helped me set up a separate email account that Connor doesn't know about and suggested I start documenting everything. Last Wednesday, I was working late at a client meeting. Truthfully, I was actually just sitting in a Starbucks scrolling through Surviving Infidelity and taking notes. And Connor showed up unannounced with dinner. He's never done this in 3 years of marriage. He claimed he was just missing me, but spent the entire impromptu dinner interrogating me about a call he'd overheard me having with Loretta where I'd said something about making big changes. The call was actually about possibly redoing our guest bedroom, but he doesn't need to know that. Then came the 27 calls incident I mentioned briefly in my last post. I now realize what triggered it. I'd left some printouts from our joint account on my desk that morning, showing his large withdrawals over the past year. I hadn't confronted him about them, just left them there. When I came home that evening, the papers were in a different position. He'd seen them, panicked, and that's why he bombarded me with calls while I was in meetings. When I finally called him back after the 27th call, the conversation went like this. Me: hey, what's the emergency? My phone was in my desk during meetings. Connor, breathing heavily. No emergency, just, is everything okay with you? With us? You've been different since you got back from Nashville. Me: different how? Connor: I don't know, just distant. And you've been taking a lot of private calls. And you mentioned something about your dad reconsidering his business plans? I'm worried about you. Notice how he slipped in concern about my dad's business between fake concern for me? Classic Connor move that I never recognized before. Me: everything's fine. Just busy with work. Why would anything be wrong? The silence on his end was so long I thought the call had dropped. Connor: no reason. I just love you, that's all. Me: I love you too. The biggest lie I've ever told. After we hung up, I sat in my car and cried for almost an hour. Not because I'm sad the marriage is ending, but because I'm mourning the relationship I thought I had. The Connor I fell in love with doesn't exist. He's a character, played by a man who sees me as nothing but a bank account with a body attached. Last night, he suggested we have another vow renewal ceremony for our parents who couldn't make it to the first one. When I asked why the sudden interest in renewing vows we just renewed 2 weeks ago, he stammered something about celebrating our love with everyone important to us. Translation: he's panicking about his gravy train derailing and wants to cement his position with my family. I smiled and said maybe next year. The relief on his face was palpable. What he doesn't know is that I've already spoken to a lawyer. Not our family lawyer, but someone recommended by Loretta who doesn't run in our social circles. I have an appointment next week to discuss my options. I've documented the financial discrepancies. I've secured my most important personal documents and irreplaceable family heirlooms by taking them to my friend's house for a photo shoot for her Instagram. Another lie, but hey, I learned from the master. The weirdest thing happened this morning. I was getting ready for work and Connor came up behind me in the bathroom, hugged me and started crying. Actually crying. Said he felt like he was losing me and didn't know why. For a split second, I almost broke down and confronted him right there. But then I remembered the conversation I overheard, remembered him laughing about his Oscar-worthy performance. And I just patted his arm and told him everything was fine, just busy at work. His tears dried up remarkably quickly when I mentioned I might have to postpone our trip to New York next month. The one where we were supposed to stay in that 5-star hotel his Instagram influencer friend recommended. Funny how his emotional crisis evaporated at the mention of a luxury experience potentially slipping away. The confrontation is coming. I'm almost ready. But I want him to sweat a little more, to feel the ground shifting under his feet without understanding why. I want him to experience just a fraction of the uncertainty and betrayal I've been feeling. Is that petty? Maybe. But when someone shatters your entire reality, I think you're entitled to a little pettiness. Edit. To those asking if we have kids, thankfully no. Connor always had just one more thing he wanted to accomplish before starting a family. I now realize that one more thing was establishing himself enough to leave with half my assets. Edit 2. Connor just texted asking if we can have dinner at my parents' house this weekend. Says he misses them. I bet he does. Second update. Hey y'all, it's been about a month since my last update, and so much has happened. First, thank you for all your support and advice. I've read every comment, even the ones questioning my methods. Trust me, I've questioned them myself every step of the way. So, picking up where we left off. After discovering Connor had been secretly siphoning money from our accounts and only staying with me for my family connections, I spent weeks quietly gathering information and preparing my exit strategy. I was planning to confront him after I had absolutely everything in order, but life had other plans. Remember that dinner at my parents' house Connor was so eager to have? We went last weekend and it was enlightening. Connor was in full charm mode, complimenting my mom's new curtains, asking my dad detailed questions about his golf game, even offering to help my sister set up her new Sonos system. To anyone watching, he was the perfect son-in-law. But now that I knew what to look for, I could see the calculation behind every interaction. During dinner, Connor casually mentioned he'd been researching investment properties in my parents' neighborhood. My dad, bless him, immediately started talking about how property values in their area were expected to rise 20% in the next 5 years. Connor's eyes actually lit up. I'm not exaggerating. It was like watching a slot machine hit the jackpot. That night after we got home, I found him on our iPad looking at properties way above our price range. When I asked how we could possibly afford them, he smiled and said my dad had mentioned helping with the down payment. My dad had said nothing of the sort. The next morning, I had my meeting with the lawyer Loretta recommended. She was amazing, direct, supportive, and thorough. She helped me understand exactly what I was entitled to and what Connor might try to claim. The good news? Our prenup does offer some protection, though not as much as I'd like. The better news? The financial forensics revealed a pattern of deception that could potentially invalidate portions of the prenup. While I was meeting with the lawyer, Connor was apparently having a complete meltdown at home. I'd left my laptop open that morning with a browser tab showing flights to my cousin's place in California, part of my exit strategy planning. When I got home, Connor had prepared an elaborate dinner with my favorite everything. Wine, candles, the works. He was trying so hard to be charming, but there was this desperate edge to everything. His hands were actually shaking when he poured the wine. During dinner, he kept dropping these bizarre comments about how much he loves our life together, how grateful he is for me, not my family, specifically me, and how he's never been happier. It was like watching someone perform a role they hadn't quite learned all the lines for. Then came the bombshell. He suggested we start trying for a baby. Right now. This from the man who has spent 3 years finding excuses to delay starting a family. I nearly choked on my wine. I asked why the sudden change of heart. Connor gave me this speech about realizing what truly matters in life, and how he's finally ready for the next step in our journey together. He actually got teary-eyed, y'all. Oscar-worthy indeed. I smiled and said, that's quite a coincidence, because I've been doing some thinking about our future too. The hope that flashed across his face was almost sad. I continued, in fact, I've been reflecting a lot on our relationship since I got back from Nashville. The hope vanished, replaced by something closer to panic. He reached for his wine glass so quickly he nearly knocked it over. He asked what kind of reflections. That's when I decided to start laying my cards on the table. Not all of them, but enough to watch him squirm. I said I'd been thinking about honesty in marriage, about what people really want versus what they say they want. Connor's face went so pale I thought he might pass out. He asked what that meant. Instead of answering directly, I asked if he remembered what he said in his vows at our renewal ceremony about how meeting me was the best thing that ever happened to him. He nodded, attempting a smile that looked more like a grimace. I asked if he meant it. Of course I did, he said, reaching for my hand across the table. I meant every word. I pulled my hand away slowly. That's interesting, because I could have sworn I heard you tell Danny that the vow renewal was pure torture, and that you had to make up romantic bullshit while my family looked on. The color drained from his face completely. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. When he finally tried to speak, I continued. Or maybe I misheard. Maybe you didn't call our marriage a nightmare and say you wake up regretting your decision every day. Maybe I imagined the part where you said the only good thing about our relationship is my family's money. Connor knocked over his wine glass then, sending red wine cascading across our white tablecloth. He didn't even move to clean it up. He just stared at me with this expression of pure horror. When he asked when I heard it, I told him. When I came home early from Nashville to surprise you. Surprise. Baby, you completely misunderstood, he started, his voice taking on that soothing tone he uses when he thinks I'm being emotional. I was just venting to Danny about a rough patch. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're frustrated. A rough patch, I repeated? Interesting. And which part was the misunderstanding? The part where you called me the money wife? Or the part where you said you're only sticking around until you're established enough to have options? His face went from pale to gray. He clearly hadn't realized how much I'd heard. He stammered that it was taken completely out of context. Then please, Connor, explain the context where telling your friend our marriage is a nightmare and you're only with me for financial gain makes sense. He couldn't, of course. Instead, he switched tactics, going from denial to tearful apology in seconds flat. He claimed he'd been going through a personal crisis when I overheard him, that he didn't mean any of it, that he loved me more than anything. I just sat there watching this performance with new eyes. All the things I used to find sincere, the tender glances, the earnest declarations, the vulnerable moments, now looked like carefully calculated moves in a long con. Are you leaving me? He finally asked. I haven't decided yet, I lied. Of course I had decided, but he didn't need to know that yet. What followed was 2 weeks of the most exhausting emotional manipulation I've ever experienced. Connor pulled out all the stops. He sent flowers to my office every day with increasingly desperate notes. He contacted my parents claiming he was worried about my sudden change in behavior. He suggested couples therapy, rich coming from someone who thought our marriage was a nightmare. He even reached out to Loretta trying to get her to talk some sense into me. The most telling part? During his campaign to save our marriage, he never once mentioned my family's financial situation. It was like he was carefully avoiding the very thing that had motivated him all along. Meanwhile, I continued executing my plan. I moved the remaining funds from our joint accounts into my secured personal accounts. I spoke with my family's financial advisor to ensure Connor couldn't access any family assets. I packed essentials and irreplaceable items and moved them to a storage unit Connor doesn't know about. I also had a private conversation with my parents, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done. My dad has always thought of Connor as the son he never had, and my mom adored him for, supposedly, making me happy. Telling them that their beloved son-in-law was a fraud who only wanted their money and connections nearly broke them. Dad wanted to confront Connor immediately, but I convinced them to follow my lead for just a little longer. The dishwasher broke down 3 days ago. Perfect timing, right? Connor immediately volunteered to call someone to fix it, which was unusual since he normally complains about repair costs. I said we should just buy a new one, and he agreed without even asking about the price. He's desperately trying to appear unconcerned about money now. Last night, we attended a dinner party at my friend Scarlett's new house. Connor has always found Scarlett a bit much, his words, with her loud personality and unfiltered opinions. But last night, he was hanging on her every word, laughing at all her jokes, even complimenting her TikTok dance videos that he's previously called embarrassing at her age. Halfway through dinner, Scarlett's boyfriend Lucas, who knows nothing about my situation, casually mentioned a news story about a guy who had scammed his wealthy wife for years. Everyone laughed about what an idiot the man was to think he could get away with it. Everyone except Connor, who suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. When Lucas asked him what he thought about the story, Connor muttered something about not all relationships being what they seem on the surface. The table went quiet. I could feel Scarlett looking at me, confused by the sudden tension. I just smiled and asked her to pass the salt. On the drive home, Connor was unusually quiet. When we pulled into our garage, he turned to me with this desperate look and asked if everything was really okay between us. I told him I didn't know what he meant. He said things had felt off for weeks, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Maybe you should check your conscience if you're feeling that something's wrong." He flinched like I'd slapped him. This morning, I found him going through our wedding album, something he hasn't looked at in years. He claimed he was feeling nostalgic, but the panic in his eyes told a different story. He's trying to find clues about how much I know and what I'm planning to do about it. I've scheduled a meeting with my parents and our family financial advisor for tomorrow. Connor thinks it's about some routine trust matter, but it's actually to formally remove him as a beneficiary from several accounts and to discuss the implications of our upcoming divorce. I've already warned my parents to act normal until after the meeting. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just tired. Tired of the performance, tired of watching him scramble to maintain his facade, tired of pretending I don't know our entire marriage has been a business transaction to him. Tonight, Connor suggested we take a second honeymoon to reconnect. He showed me pictures of this ridiculously expensive resort in Bali on his phone, talking about infinity pools and private beaches. The old me would have been thrilled. The new me just wondered how much of my family's money he was planning to spend on this last-ditch effort. I smiled and told him it sounded lovely, but maybe we should talk about it after the meeting with my parents tomorrow. The relief on his face was immediate. He clearly thinks he's still got time to fix whatever's broken. He doesn't realize that by this time tomorrow, his carefully constructed world will be in pieces. The meeting with my parents and the financial advisor is scheduled for 10 a.m. By 11, he'll know that I've known everything for weeks. By noon, he'll be faced with the reality that the gravy train has not only stopped, but is reversing course at high speed. Edit. Connor just texted asking if I want sushi for dinner tonight. Says he wants to treat me to something special before our big financial meeting tomorrow. If he only knew. Last update. Hey Reddit family. I want to start by thanking every single one of you who supported me through this journey. Your comments, messages, and advice helped me find strength on days when I felt like I was drowning. I promised a final update when everything was settled, so here it is. The conclusion to my story. So, that meeting with my parents and the financial advisor, it went exactly as planned. And Connor's face when he realized what was happening is something I'll cherish forever. We all sat down in my dad's home office. Me, Connor, my parents, and Mr. Bradshaw, our family's financial advisor since I was a kid. Connor was all smiles, probably thinking this was his chance to cement his position in the family finances. Dad started by asking Connor if there was anything he wanted to tell us before we began. Connor looked confused but said no. Everything was great. Dad nodded and then pulled out a folder containing printouts of Connor's secret withdrawals from our joint account, screenshots of text messages to Dee about the long-term plan and the coup de grace, a transcript of the phone call I'd overheard where he called our marriage a nightmare. Y'all should have seen Connor's face. It was like watching someone's entire world collapse in slow motion. He went from confused to shocked to panicked to calculating in about 10 seconds flat. He immediately tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd been going through a rough time and had said things he didn't mean. Mom, who had been quietly seething since I told her everything, finally lost it. She called him a gold-digging parasite and said she'd never been so disappointed in her judgment of character. Connor actually tried to appeal to her, saying they'd always had such a special bond and that she knew the real him. Mom just laughed and asked which version was the real him, the one who called his marriage a nightmare or the one who cried during his vow renewal. The meeting ended with Mr. Bradshaw explaining that Connor had been formally removed from all family accounts, trusts, and business interests. Dad informed him that divorce papers would be delivered to him that afternoon, and that he had 24 hours to remove his personal belongings from our house. Connor's final play was turning to me with tears in his eyes. Actual tears. The man deserves an Emmy. And asking if I was really going to throw away 3 years of marriage over one stupid conversation. I looked him straight in the eyes and told him I wasn't throwing away anything. He'd already done that when he decided I was nothing but a meal ticket. The divorce process itself was surprisingly quick. It turns out when one party has overwhelming evidence that the other entered the marriage under fundamentally fraudulent pretenses, and said party has the resources for good lawyers, things can move efficiently. Connor fought it at first, demanding half of everything, including future interest in my family's business. His initial counteroffer was so outrageous, even his own lawyer looked embarrassed. But his position weakened considerably when my team presented the evidence. The unexplained withdrawals, the hidden accounts we'd discovered, and most damning of all, the recordings of him admitting he'd married me for financial gain. In the end, he walked away with significantly less than he'd hoped for, though still more than he deserved in my opinion. The most satisfying moment came during our final mediation session. Connor's lawyer brought up his significant contributions to building my career and supporting my family's business interests. My attorney simply played the recording of Connor telling Danny that being my husband was his meal ticket, and referring to me as the money wife. The look on Connor's face when he realized his own words had destroyed his leverage was priceless. Beyond the legal proceedings, these 6 months have been a roller coaster. The first few weeks after the confrontation were the hardest. I cycled through rage, grief, humiliation, and crushing self-doubt. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed all the signs? My therapist, yes, I got an excellent therapist, best decision ever, helped me understand that Connor's deception wasn't successful because I was stupid or naive. It was successful because he was calculating and skilled at manipulation. She helped me see that trusting someone isn't a weakness. Breaking that trust is the failure, not giving it. I moved out of our house even before it was sold. Too many memories tainted by the knowledge that Connor had been performing, rather than loving me there. I found a beautiful apartment downtown, much smaller than our house but completely mine, decorated exactly as I want with no consideration for anyone else's preferences. The first night in my new place was weirdly hard. I'd been so focused on the logistics, setting up utilities, changing my address on Amazon, figuring out where all my random kitchen gadgets should go, that I hadn't prepared for the emotional impact. I've been rediscovering parts of myself that had gradually disappeared during my marriage. Remember how Connor always said my laugh was too loud in public? Last week I snorted laughing at a TikTok while waiting in line at Starbucks and didn't even think to apologize. Baby steps, right? My relationship with my parents has actually deepened through all this. Dad apologized to me, which caught me completely off guard. He said he worried that growing up with wealth had made me a target, and that he should have better prepared me for people who might see me as an opportunity, rather than a person. It was the most vulnerable conversation we've ever had. Mom has gone full mama bear mode, checking in on me daily and sending me articles with titles like 10 signs that man is just after your money and how to spot a gold digger. It's a bit much, but I appreciate the sentiment. She's also set me up on 3 blind dates already, all with men she's personally vetted for financial independence. I've declined them all. I'm nowhere near ready to date again, but her heart's in the right place. My friends have been incredible, especially Loretta and Scarlett, who have shown up for me in ways I can never repay. Tina, unfortunately, sided with Connor initially. They had been friends before Connor and I met, and she believed his version of events. The strangest part has been running into mutual friends who don't know the whole story. Last week, I bumped into Connor's friend Danny, yes, that Danny who he was talking to on the phone, at Target. He did this weird half wave, then pretended to be really interested in paper towels. I just smiled and kept walking. Later, I saw him watching me from the parking lot as I loaded my car. It was clear Connor had told him some version of events that painted me as the villain. Whatever. I don't have the energy to care what Connor's bros think anymore. Last month, Connor actually showed up at my apartment unannounced. He said he wanted to talk, to explain himself. I told him he'd had 3 years to be honest with me, and I wasn't interested in whatever story he'd crafted now. He tried to hand me a letter, which I refused to take. He left it in my mailbox anyway. For a moment, I considered burning it unopened, but curiosity won out. It was a strange mix of apology and justification. He claimed he truly had grown to love me despite his initial motivations, that he regretted his words to Danny, that he missed us, and the life we had built. I read it once, then shredded it without responding. His words have no power over me anymore. According to Loretta's cousin, who works at that fancy steakhouse downtown, Connor is now dating the daughter of one of my dad's business associates. She's been warned, of course, but has decided Connor is misunderstood, and that I clearly did something to provoke his behavior. Some lessons have to be learned firsthand, I suppose. I've also gotten really into cooking, something Connor always dominated in our relationship. Last night, I made this amazing mushroom risotto that actually turned out edible. Progress. Do I still have bad days? Absolutely. Sometimes I wake up furious that I gave 3 years of my life to someone who saw me as nothing but a bank account. Sometimes I worry about trusting anyone romantically again. Sometimes I still replay conversations and interactions, looking for signs I should have seen. The divorce was finalized last month, 47 days faster than average for our county. The house sold quickly, and I used my portion to pay off some student loans I'd been carrying forever and invested the rest. Connor tried to claim emotional distress and damage to his professional reputation in our final hearing, but those claims were dismissed almost immediately. Last week, my mom sent me a Facebook screenshot of Connor at some charity gala with his new girlfriend. My first reaction wasn't jealousy or anger, it was relief. Relief that he's someone else's problem now. Relief that I don't have to wonder if every smile, every kind word, every gesture of affection is part of some elaborate performance designed to access my family's money. The money wife is dead. Long live just plain Natalie. Oh, remember that second phone I found with the mysterious contact D? Turns out D stands for Denise, Connor's ex-girlfriend from college, who conveniently reached out to him 6 months after our wedding. Apparently, they'd been in contact the entire time we were married, with Connor sending her money regularly and promising they'd be together once the plan was complete. She attached screenshots of their conversations as proof, including one where he told her our vow renewal was the last hurdle before they could move to phase 2. I wasn't even angry when I read her message. I just felt sorry for her. She actually believes she's special, that he wouldn't do to her what he did to me. I sent her back one message. Good luck. You'll need it. Edit. Many have asked if I'm still in contact with Connor's family. His parents actually reached out to apologize after everything came to light. They had no idea what he'd done and were horrified. We exchanged holiday cards, but nothing more. Some connections aren't worth maintaining.